talking about the thyroid. We've talked about thyroid a lot of times before, so for some of you this is going to be a review. And we'll keep it pretty much focused on the basics, okay? From a functional perspective of thyroid and a functional medicine perspective of thyroid, what we're trying to do, again, is restore optimals. And we'll look tonight at blood value ranges. We'll look tonight at thyroid and what it does and how it responds, or how the body responds to thyroid hormones. Okay? And then we'll talk again about supplementation that we can utilize to help to restore optimal function of the thyroid. Okay? A lot of what we'll talk about tonight is based off of Dr. Karazian's book. We just call it the thyroid book. Okay? But for the full title, why do I still have thyroid symptoms when my blood labs are normal? Right? And a lot of people that have read this book have seen, oh my goodness, that checklist looks just like me, so you can pass that around. What is the thyroid? First of all, in our bodies we have several glands that we call endocrine glands, and the thyroid is a major endocrine gland that is in the neck, right at the front, and basically has two poles. These two poles make it almost a shape like a butterfly. The center is called the isthmus, and the sides are the lobes. Embedded deep within the thyroid itself are four very important glands called the parathyroids. And the parathyroid glands have the responsibility of maintaining bone density, calcium, absorption, resorption, and the utilization of parathyroid hormone then, or the recognition of parathyroid hormone function, has again to do with our calcium utilization in the system. When we look at the thyroid hormone is primarily T4. So the thyroid produces T4, and then that T4 is converted in the liver. 60%, okay, of the thyroid hormone is converted to an active form of thyroid hormone. We call it T3. So what is T4? What is T3? What are we actually looking at? T4 represents tetra, or 4, iodothyronine. Iodothyronine. And T3 is iodothyronine. Okay? That means it has 3 iodines, and the inactive form has 4 iodines. Alright? So intuitively we think then, well, if my thyroid's not working, should I not just use iodine? That'll make it better, right? If thyroid hormone is 4 iodines, or active form is 3 iodines, shouldn't I just use iodine? What's the answer? No, right? Because when we actually look at it, iodine has the ability to trigger autoimmune thyroid disease. Okay, we'll just put AI. Autoimmune thyroid disease, which is Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Okay, so we don't use iodine supplementation to correct a thyroid imbalance, even though the thyroid hormone is letter abbreviated as T4, 4-iodothyronine, or T3, tri-iodothyronine. We utilize then other supplementation to actually activate the thyroid in a functional level rather than just bombarding it with precursors. Okay? When we look at thyroid, a lot of people in the past have been afraid of a condition called thyroid goiter. A goiter is nothing more than an enlarged thyroid, and what we find is much of goiter, or the enlargement of thyroid, is due to an autoimmune attack. So the body starts to attack itself, like we see with rheumatoid arthritis, where the immune system starts to attack the joints, and the joints get thicker and larger. like lupus, where skin tissues may become inflamed and you'll see a rash that looks like a butterfly rash over the nose and face when you see the kidneys become inflamed. Okay, that's lupus, and that's an autoimmunity. Goiter often is an autoimmune attack against the thyroid. And when you actually look at the goiter of thyroid, or you see the enlargement of thyroid, if you look around, you'll start to recognize what does that look like. And then the neat thing is when that thyroid actually shrinks, right? When we actually see then the thyroid that was enlarged start to shrink by treating it correctly and not with iodine. Okay? 60% of the total thyroid hormone is activated in the liver. 20% is activated in the GI system and primarily in the small intestines that loop back and forth in between the large intestine. Okay? So when we look at this, 20% is actually activated in the small intestine, the GI system, by what? Good bacteria. So that's why the buzz about probiotics. Healthy bacteria in the gut actually aids in the conversion of our thyroid hormones into active form thyroid hormone. The other 20%, so 60-20, we're still missing 20%, is converted in peripheral tissues around the heart, around the muscles, around the bone, and the bone marrow. And that has then a response systemically, this T3, at the cells to activate the small powerhouses in the cells. We'll actually draw it this way, called the mitochondria. Okay? Mitochondria are little powerhouses that burn up sugar and produce for us as byproducts water and carbon dioxide. In essence, makes energy for us. So what are the symptoms of low thyroid? Lack of energy. What else?
Cold.
Cold. So my body temperature is low. Exactly. What else do we notice as low thyroid symptoms?
Your hair
Weight
falls
gain.
out.
My hair falls out, weight gain, brittle nails, okay, dry skin, dry scalp, lethargy, depression, slowed bowels, slow bowel elimination or constipation.
High cholesterol.
High cholesterol, that's right. So all of these things may be symptoms of a low thyroid.
Do you have to have all those symptoms?
No. The question is, do you have to have all of those symptoms? The answer is no. Any number of those symptoms or combinations of those symptoms may be present for you. Okay? Thinning of the outer third of the eyebrow. Okay, so, oh, my eyebrow used to be so thick. Look at this. It's almost erased on the outside edge. Okay? Thinning of the outer third of the eyebrow. Very common with hypothyroidism. The interesting thing is, though, when we actually look at the autoimmunity of thyroid, people will have both symptoms of low and high thyroid. Because when the immune system begins to attack either the hormone itself or the thyroid itself, it may actually spill out spontaneously excessive thyroid, so I may experience hyperthyroid symptoms. What are hyperthyroid symptoms? Racing heart rate, dry skin, thin hair, thin nails. Wait a minute, that sounds just like low thyroid. So hyperthyroid and low thyroid are very, very similar. And sometimes it becomes confusing. Which am I dealing with? Heart palpitations or racing heart, inward trembling, okay? That may be hyperthyroid symptoms or the autoimmune symptoms that go from low to high based upon the activity of the immune system. Please.
Can the body go back and forth between the two?
Definitely.
When it's trying to figure out what to be?
Exactly. So the question is, do we actually see then high and low symptoms of thyroid? And the answer is absolutely. When we look at a metabolic profile, people actually circle in both categories, hypo and hyperthyroid symptoms. And a lot of times what you end up seeing are both. Okay? It will fluctuate. And what is it that often triggers autoimmune thyroid disease? Yep. Gluten. Okay? So the foods actually, and the food proteins associated with gluten, which includes then wheat, rye, barley, oats that are contaminated by gluten, and spelt fall into a category of proteins called glutens or gliadins. Okay? Gluten and gliadin, or gliadin, wherever you're from. And when you look at those proteins have a very similar structure to thyroid hormone. And when the body starts to see these proteins passing through the gut undigested, then the immune system is waiting there with an immune attack ready to bomb these guys. Okay? So the tanks are all hanging out. There's a little guy up there ready to target and eliminate these guys as quickly as he can. And he starts to target now these proteins, and after a while these proteins, as this little tank moves around in the body, starts to look like the thyroid as well. And now it starts to attack the thyroid. And then, if this type of a presentation persists, it may start to attack the liver. And if this presentation persists, it may attack the skin. And then, in the base of the skull, in the back, 2 lobes, a very, very important brain tissue called cerebellum. Okay? The cerebellum is the coordinator of the brain. So a lot of times when we see people with thyroid imbalances, we'll also see cerebellar imbalances that may include something we call dysdiadochokinesia. When they wave their hands like this, you'll actually see one hand is really, really slow. Okay? Or you may even see it kind of sloppy when they're trying to wave their hand. Okay? That's more advanced. Oftentimes you'll see it in little children with something we call cerebellar ataxia. It's a wide gait. You'll see that little kid who's running down the soccer field with the real wide gait. Okay? A little kid who can't do the jumping jacks. Okay? He may be actually dealing with a cerebellar ataxia, or an atactic or imbalance or discoordinated movement. And that may actually be associated with food. Is gluten the only thing that can cause an autoimmunity to thyroid? Absolutely not. We can look at everything from heavy metals, chemicals, other allergens, and parasites in the GI system as well that can create imbalances in the thyroid. A major cause of thyroid impaired function and conversion is an overactive adrenal system wherein we produce too much cortisol from a stress response in an attempt to maintain our blood sugars. So adrenal imbalances also lead to thyroid dysfunction. So those of you who've been treated in a functional perspective have recognized then how often it is that we treat adrenals and thyroid simultaneously. Okay? If any of you noticed that? We're on adaptocrine and proglyco-SP and adrenocalm and adrenostim while we're using thyroid CMV and oxycell and Theraxis PT or Throxel. One of those types of supplementations to work together to help to restore our adrenal hypothalamic pituitary axis to restore then this output of the endocrine system. Okay? So that's another important key as we look at this. Now, again, from an endocrinology perspective, a lot of information. What's the key here? Autoimmunity is often triggered by something that I'm eating. Isn't it great when we can figure out that what I'm eating may actually be contributing to the cause of the demise of my system? Let me say it a different way. So often people have diseases that are chronic diseases and we never know what the cause is. In this case, though, most of the time we know what the cause is of the hypofunctioning thyroid. Let me say it a different way. When we know what is the cause of our thyroid imbalance, it's a very simple correction, but so many people are so reluctant to actually say, I'm willing to change that. Okay? It often becomes the most challenging. Oh, I'd rather deal with the disease than actually correct my thyroid. Get off gluten, give up bread, give up cereal, give up pasta. You're gotta be crazy, right? I'd rather die. Okay, you can die. It won't be fun, but you can die. That's what we look at. So, autoimmunity. When we look at then correcting this, we have to look at adrenal function simultaneously. So cortisol, adrenal. And when we look at the adrenal function then, with the thyroid function, we avoid using iodine as a primary supplementation. In fact, again, people who use iodine to treat autoimmunity are running the risk of actually triggering the autoimmunity. So when people say, well, I felt so much better using iodine, it may be because they were so hypothyroid that when they add the iodine, they actually get a spilling out of thyroid hormone, which makes